Here is our Pano. Let's talk to the patient if they want that wisdom tooth out also. We'll just take it out at the same time, but we're going to focus here at number 19. EXT number 1, EXT number 10, and an immediate. Oh, so it's number 10. Okay. Let's talk to her about 19 also, or 30, sorry. Okay. Oh. Okay, well, let's look at number 10. Not my favorite thing in the world to see there. All right, let's look at number 10 here. All right, Max, this is a hard case. Okay. I believe I've prepped this patient to say if it does not look hospitable for an implant, we're just going to graft it and come back later. Okay? So, a lot of buccal wall missing here. We're going to extract. We're going to see how much buccal wall is present. And then we're going to try to place an implant as lingual as possible here. Let's look at it in multiple dimensions.
Very carefully extract.
Yeah. My guess is it's just going to fall right out. Now, would you flap and then extract it, or would you extract it and then flap it?
I would think to flap and then extract just so I can see how much buccal plate I have and actually visualize what would be the benefits of the other way.
Yeah. So flap, then extract, then flap. So the benefits of flapping first and then extracting is what you said. Visualization. The benefits of extracting first and then flapping, especially when you have this much periodontal disease and stuff going on, is when the tooth is out of there, you can get your 15 in there and cut away all those fibers that are going to be attaching into the bottom of the sulcus. Then you can reflect a little bit more predictably around it. So there's no right or wrong. Also, if you extract it first and then flap second, the anesthetic has more time to perfuse into it, which kind of helps with your vasoconstriction too.
Okay.
So neither right or wrong in terms of how you're going to handle it. It's just kind of knowing what you're getting into ahead of time.
Is there a world in the aesthetic zone where you don't flap at all?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, in this case, you're going to have to flap it to evaluate even the restorability of number 8 or number 9 and 10. So number 9, we'll kind of see what's going on in that region. But let's say all the bony walls are present, then yeah, I think there's a lot of wisdom in pulling the tooth and doing an immediate, and then maintaining it with like a temp or a custom healing abutment or something like that to really preserve the papilla in that site. Yeah. But also at the same time, if you can't see what you're doing and the ridge is narrow, you could be doing the patient a disservice by perforating somewhere else, to try to have a cosmetic outcome.
A lot of times when a patient comes in with like a fractured central or lateral at the gum line, you can get it out really easily. You don't have to flap anything. You put either a big healing abutment on, or you make it temporary, and that fills in the gap. And you get continuous blood supply, no removing periosteum.
Say that last part again, but like blood supply.
Like when you don't do a flap, you get continuous blood supply because you're not removing periosteum from the bone.
Yep.
And that's where you get all your blood supply from.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And by the way, this is Dr. Farkas. I was talking about you as soon as you left the room. I was like, oh, I got him out of the corner of my eye. So this is Dr. Farkas. So let's say you pull the tooth and we decide to move forward with the implant placement, which I think is going to be a 50-50 at this point. Okay? Okay. So this is a 11.5 over here. We're going to keep it as lingual as possible. So that way if we augment the buccal, we have more space to put bone graft onto the buccal. And then let's look at it in this view here. I personally think this patient probably, in my private practice, would be better with like a cantilever off the cuspid. Pull the tooth and just, it's a blown out site. Sometimes you flap these and they've maintained tissue well, God knows how, but then you flap them and then you lose all the tissue because you've just messed with the site. So we could potentially be doing a disservice for the patient in private practice by doing this. Now, from this patient's perspective, things are cost prohibitive. They're here at an educational setting to get a solution. If we go in there and we extract and we determine that number 9 and everything needs to come out, we'll get them fixed up with some kind of prosthetic and take care of them cosmetically too. So we are going to assess the restorability on this guy, and then we'll place it right in between, keep it lingual, and then that's the nose. Are you going to be drilling into the nose?
Tell me more.
It's just a yes or no.
We talked about the sinus, we haven't talked about the nose yet, so
Same rules and regulations.
okay.
And just consider the tissue in the nose is 10 times thicker than the sinus membrane. So if you pop in, you get a little bit of a bleed, it's okay. And also there's cases where we'll actually reflect out the floor of the nose so you can see the implant go in. We're not going to do that here, but you can just pop in with your drill, get a 50-50 in a controlled setting, and then follow with your 3-5.
Okay.
Yeah, so you'll be good to go. So yes, perforate into the nasal floor, or perforate the nasal floor into the nasal cavity.
That could be your only cortical stabilization.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then we are going to talk to the patient about the elephant in the room, which is this site here, because this is the one that makes the most sense. And say, while you're here,
Dr. Ian,
yeah.
going back to number 10, will there be any issues with like the crown to root ratio?
Ah,
Because it looks
beautiful.
like it's gonna be super huge, but
Yeah, okay, you bring up beautiful point. Okay, crown to root ratio, yes, there will be, depending upon location in the mouth, opposing dentition, bruxism and parafunction. So this is a lateral, not in a heavy loaded area. So I feel comfortable with it nonetheless because it's an area I would cantilever. If I go to a molar and I try to pull a trick like this on a 3-5 implant, like no fly zone, and then also is the patient apneic, are they bruxing? I'm kind of evaluating the occlusal load in the area. Also what I'd say is the space that's occurred here, they're going to have 3 central incisors. So I need to talk to the patient about orthodontics, possibly veneers, and possibly like at least composite to make this thing look good at the end of it all. Because if I restore it and they have, it's wider than a central incisor, it's going to look like shit.
Need to look into
You can, depending upon the scenario, everything is multifactorial. So no decision we make exists in a vacuum, right? Like in any part of life. So then with surgery, it's the same thing. Always look at the risk factors. So like a patient who is diabetic and they have A1C of 7.5, I'm fine. But are they taking an SSRI? And are they kind of like a pain in the ass to deal with? And on top of that, do you think they're going to follow post-care instructions? Then all the things add up to like, okay, I got a red flag here versus just 10 yellow flags. So I would agree with the person who said that statement if all the other factors kind of fall into place too. All right, so Max, let's say she comes to her senses and says, number 30 seems like a really good place for an implant and a tooth. What's the bone quality over here?
looks a lot better. I would say that's probably D2. Maybe.
I'm going to zoom in right here. So I'd say D2 down here. Okay, what do you think this is right here?
D3. D4.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is going to be mush.
Okay.
Okay, so where are you going to get stability, really? Kind of the crest, or if the implant the apex kind of butts up right here. Also, this submandibular fossa, if your implant comes in at this angle here, what you're going to have is going to be soft bone. So you're going to be like, okay, 25, 25, and it's going to go up a little bit. You're going to go 35. Oh, things are great. Then all of a sudden it's going to drop exponentially. So what's happening at that point? The implant is hitting right here, and you haven't drilled and perforated that area, which I don't want you to do, but you haven't drilled far enough so the implant bottoms out. It's like the implant has just hit masonry. So if I put an implant through drywall and I hit a brick underneath, the screw is just going to spin and all the drywall is going to auger out of the wall. Same thing happens over here, is it just hits brick and it can't advance any further. 5 of you are going to do that this weekend. I want you to feel what it feels like to have that happen. I still have that happen to me. Okay? Things are different from a CBCT than in the mouth. But you have to understand what's happening in the feedback in the ratchet when it happens, so you know how to stop and then figure out what the hell's going on. Okay? So in this scenario, we're probably, if you look here, this is kind of where you'd want the implant placed, but based on the bone, it's going to be slightly lingualized if it actually goes in the direction it needs to go, and it's going to throw you off. You're gonna be like, oh, okay, why does my restoration have the access hole coming out of the lingual without an angled screw channel in ASC? Is because I had to follow the contour here. Okay? Are you gonna do like a bone block on this patient to regrow bone and charge them $2,500? Or are you gonna get an angled screw channel and just upright it ever so slightly in your restoration? So sometimes you place them slightly lingual, and that's okay. But this is really soft bone. You're gonna be shocked at how like soft it is, and then what type of implant will we consider out of the Neodent, Rolodex or whatever that they have for this scenario, a helix or a drive?
What would be the benefit between each?
Okay. Have we covered the helix and drives and the differences or not really? Okay, so the helix implant, and thank you for asking the question, man. Like if you don't have the answer and you want to volley back a question my way, I will take that all day long. Okay. So the helix, we have the top 2/3, and then the bottom 1/3, and then the drive implant. You got the whole implant. So the bottom 1/3 of the helix implant is triangular threads, so they're self-tapping and they cut. They will pull the implant down and they will cut into the bone and they'll grab into it. Then the top 2/3 is a more compressive thread, so then it compresses. That's why the helix is your workhorse, because it'll grab in, it'll pull you down the osteotomy you created, and then it'll compress bone with the top 2/3. But when you're in soft bone, the drive implant is all compressive threads. It's all rectangular threads or square threads, so it'll actually compress the whole time. The only problem with the drive implant is it's completely rounded over here. So if it bottoms out anywhere, it completely bottoms out, okay? But it's very compressive. So you have to drill appropriately for it. They all have the same platform, so all your screws here, all fit the same thing. If you use BioHorizon, like that's fine, I've used them in the past. The only negative is that all their platforms are different, which means you have to buy all different prosthetic parts, and again, it's just their way to make more money. So you have a universal platform here between the helix and drive, so you can kind of interchange between the two. So if it's super soft bone like your D4, you sometimes automatically go to the drive implant. So you're thinking in the back of your mind, when you plan a case like this, if you don't stock a drive implant, you call your rep and say, hey, send me 3 of them in various sizes, and then just send back the ones you don't use. That way you're just prepared for that procedure. So this is one that's on its face. When we look at our Pano, when you see this, right? You're like, hey, all freaking day, I got this, right? Then you get into it, it's D4, you got the submandibular fossa, and then all of the things kind of add up, and you're like, ah, shit, that's actually kind of hard. Okay.